Before we get started today, I want to say thank you for every single like, comment, recommendation, and a very special thank you to my listener support group. If you like what we do here at Off the Deep End Podcast, please consider checking out the listener support tab on our channel's anchor link. Without you, we would not be able to continue the great work we're doing with these conversations, breaking down boundaries and helping heal each other by sharing our stories, our trials, our tribulations, and how we process them. Let's jump straight into this episode.
Are you thinking about making a podcast? Spotify has a platform that lets you make one, and if I can figure it out, you definitely can too. You can create your own content all in one place for free with zero hangups and even earn money as soon as you get started. Spotify lets you record and edit episodes from your phone or computer so you can go mobile, just like I enjoy to do. My favorite thing about it is that you can create video episodes if you wish and upload them to wherever podcasts are heard. You can even set up subscriptions or, if you're like me, listener support options for listeners to help you grow. I 10 out of 10 recommend the Spotify for Podcasters app. Or, why don't you just step over to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started on your own podcast. What's happening, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Off the Deep End Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Eddie, and I'm joined by somebody all the way from Texas. Thank you for time traveling, my brother, Cody Watkins. He's a fitness coach. Not only that, he actually looks the part that most athletic industry superstars do not. I'm so excited for you to share the example, and thank you for joining us, my brother.
Not a problem, man. It's good to be on here.
Excellent. Well, let's jump straight into it. What was your childhood like? When did this fitness thing show up for you? Was it taught to you by your father? Was it taught to you by just, did you see a picture of Arnold in a magazine? What was it for you?
No, I probably had a little bit more unique, right? So none of my family is into fitness. Most of them are very chubby or out of shape, just to put it lightly. Very quite a few health problems and stuff in the family, especially more so on my mom's side, but as far as taking care of their health, their weight, and all that stuff. I guess more that what got me into it was I was kind of skinny fat, right? So I was only like 160 pounds, but I had man boobs. So, realistically, if you tell people you want to diet, they're like, what do you need to diet for? You're small, but you jiggle. So like it was kind of a tough starting point, And so not knowing anything, I just tried to do everything myself. So I didn't really get into bodybuilding until later. I actually did powerlifting and stuff first. So what I first started doing was just using basic logic with my limited amount of knowledge I had back then. So when I was like 16, I'm like, well, protein builds muscle, so that's going to be what I'm going to do. So I ate nothing but tuna fish for like 4 days straight, right? My parents, everyone else eating like pizza and Chinese food. I'm eating tuna, just tuna, not even mayo, no nothing, just straight tuna. Lasted until about that fourth day when I couldn't gag it down. And then I thought, okay, I need to try a different strategy. So then that's when I started, playing around with like keto diets and stuff. And this is back in the days of like the bodybuilding.com forums and the anabolic mind forums. So I was just diving in those and just really trying to extract information from wherever I could, because our weights teacher in school, he was 400 pounds, right? So like he's telling everyone to eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches to get in shape, right? Well,
what type of shape is he looking for? I don't know about that.
Well, he was round's a shape too, So
it is.
he was shapely, just a little different than most of us like to be. But the information really wasn't out there. So in today's society, it's almost too much information out there for them. But back then you had to search high and low trying to find everything. So it was basically just trial by fire. I had to try something, see if it worked, try something, see if it worked. And I am extremely dedicated / the stubborn, depending on who you want to ask. But once I commit to something, that's it. So I don't break. So basically at that point, I did keto. I leaned down. I was like 148 pounds. Bear in mind, I'm like 5'10", right? So that's more like prison camp survivor. That's not a good look. But I had abs for the first time, right? And then I started going the other way with, like bulking from the forums and stuff like that. So I basically would just get fat and strong and then lean down again, get fat and strong. And I did that for a few years, but I ended up, bench press is the big thing in high school, right? So I just wanted to have the highest bench press out there. So I got up to like somewhere in the 315s my senior year. I was like 275 when I was like 175 on the rebulk back up. But I was in shape, right? I could run a 40 and 4.64. So they were like, oh, we want you to play football. And I hate sports, right? That's the irony of this physique. I don't do or play any sport at all. I just look pretty, right? But they all wanted me to do that stuff, right? And it's nothing I really wanted to. So after school, I was working for a painting company for my uncles and stuff, and I had at one of like the house parties with like the post high school era, a couple guys they were working at GNC, and they're like, "Oh man, come in, we'll get you a job." I'm like, "Well, GNC, it sells supplements, right? I'm into fitness. I'm going to the gym 5 days a week." So I started working there, and that's kind of where everything took off because there'd be trainers that were coming in, and I kind of put them on a pedestal for a little bit. And I can never be a personal trainer. They're so smart. And then I was actually training for a powerlifting meet, and my fitness manager to be, I didn't know him at the time, but he came up to me in the gym and he's like, "Hey man, my top trainers are making $4,000 a month." And I'm like, "Oh my, $4,000 a month." Like, God, I can't imagine what that money's like, right? Bear in mind, I'm working at GNC. I think back then it was like maybe like $12 an hour or something like that with the commissions in there. So that sounded like just this insane number I could never hit. And so I actually I went out. I didn't have the money, so I went out and got a credit card to pay for my certification. So charged that. I figured I'd make it back later. So then that's actually how I got into personal training, was kind of through that, because he seen me training for a powerlifting meet, basically in the gym just kind of right after high school. But there was no parental influence with it, right? They were, semi-supportive and stuff with it. They didn't ever like flag me down with it, but I definitely took on my own adventure with it, right? I was always the black sheep of the family. And they're just like, "Yeah, he's eating chicken again." Yeah.
Black sheep unite.
Yeah. But it's how it works,
kind of carve your own path, brother. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I did. I'm the only one in my family who does that kind of stuff. And initially you'll see a lot of health stuff around you, and you want to help them all, but you can't. You can't save people from themselves. So like, kind of backtracking on that, it's like I basically watched my grandmother eat herself to death. So she was, damn near 400 pounds at probably 5'3". So, and she had an open heart surgery, right? She was supposed to die, didn't, got a big settlement, et cetera, right? So it just kind of carried on. But, like I watched it, right? And she couldn't physically get up. I mean, she would take like 10 steps to the bathroom and be winded. She was on oxygen and all this. She couldn't fit behind the car seat to drive, like behind the steering wheel, right? So the doctors at the time, and it's a whole different rant, so I'll try to steer clear, but doctors most time are bullshit, right? But
yeah,
she was under 800 milligrams of sodium a day, and her family would bring her fast food, right? Because mom wanted a cheeseburger, or mom wanted Denny's, or because they didn't have the ability to control the food themselves. So how would they control it for someone else, right? And like, it sounds bad, but what if worst case she throws a fit, right? She's just burning calories. Like, let her. She's not going to starve. She's not going to die. She's going to burn calories and might live a few more years. But no one had my mentality with it. I was an ass for saying anything like that still into this day. But it's accurate, and whether you like some of the stuff that comes out of my mouth or not, it doesn't change the truth to it, right? If you're offended by it, there's a good likelihood that you need to rethink your perception of what's going on, because it's likely an insecurity of your own coming out.
100%. And I love that logic. It's so important.
Yeah. So, I mean, with that, but you watch it for years, right? So I remember when I first got into like 24 and, started getting in the working world of personal training, and, I would get clients that were very, very large. And I don't know if you've ever been around large people, but they get a unique fragrance to them because they cannot bathe to get the bacteria out of the rolls. So like, when people say fat people stink, there is a certain logic to that, right? So like, I remember I had a very large gal, and she was pretty decrepit, right? And it was like, my grandma had already died at this point. When I first started training here, I'm like, oh, I can save her, I can save her from this. But it's so hard with some of those people because they're so far gone, right? You can't bring them all back from the deep end. You could give them every plan in the world, all the motivation in the world, and good luck, right? So I got into the training bit at 24 Hour Fitness, so I was top trainer in the region for them, and I worked with 230 to 240 sessions every single month, just 7 days a week. Still working at GNC too, because I don't really have a stop button once I kind of hit on a task, right? I'm very used to hustling. And then well, I know that, I guess you're one of the young stuff. I don't know where I should stop here and transition in.
Never stop, brother.
Okay. Well, that's easy enough. So I'll tell the full story, and then you can backfill the details. Jeez. So then I got into that a while, and I was still pretty young, right? I was 20 or 21 years old when I was working at 24, and I was the top sales or top in sales for personal training and top sessions serving in a month for personal training. But with that, I think, looking back at it now, it comes with a bit of ego too, because I was so good at it. So I ended up opening like a personal training group training studio. And I did that for like 2 or 3 years, brought a couple of the trainers from over there. But realistically, man, managing trainers was a nightmare back then. I didn't have the skill sets to do it, right? The social media and the internet was still more or less in its infancy. So it wasn't something that I was super well versed in, right? I was used to basically the machine marketing for me. So that land was a little bit more tricky to navigate. So then I ended up just going back into freelance personal training. And I went out to Battleground, and Jeff out there, super, super cool guy. He brought me in, and just the pay structure and stuff was very trainer friendly. So I started building my client base there, and I was there for about 10 years till we took off over here doing basically online and then in-person hybrid. It's still same deal, 6-7 days a week, like grinding away. I opened up a DEXA scan company somewhere towards the tail end there. So like we're kind of doing jack of all trades, like fitness related. So anything realistically fitness related was kind of going on there. And then obviously the competition stuff kind of networked me. I mean, we technically met through the world of competition, so it's been good for that. But yeah, I mean, my last show was a year after my heart surgery, so I that was more or less just to see if I could do it, and I did. And then bodybuilding is a crazy world, so it was time to step back and focus on actually living, not live the prisoner life that it technically is, that no one can see through the lens. It's not until they step out of it they can really see what it is.
100%. Definitely, man. I've had my own experience trying to step away.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. You'll watch people, they'll step out and they don't ever get out, right? Most of the people that get out, they're dead. That's how they get out. Some of the biggest names we know have died in the last 2-3 years just from pushing the needle, figuratively and literally. It doesn't normally pan out very well. And you'll watch guys that they go to die and then they try it all over again. And it's kind of cyclic when it comes to that. So even when I came in after my heart surgery, right, that was different in all other preps because I didn't push the needle. Like I already met with the Reaper, so it was no fat burners. First time I had to do cardio in my life, right? I wasn't pushing supplements. I wasn't running fat burners. I just actually had to like work it off for the first time in my life. But I was already in shape before, so it's easier to get in shape once you've been in shape. So I still ended up, I think it was 5.1% on a DEXA, and I was like 230 pounds, and I was basically taking nothing. So it was cool, but that is like I beat fitness, right? Like it's time to move on to some other things. And then obviously, like as you know, the world lost its shit, and I had to piece out of that terrible place when it went bananas.
Yes, I'm still trapped up here, but you know what? Hopefully, in a couple more years, I can make a serious move to make my family a safe place, a good environment with the sun, with so I can exercise my own rights. Especially as a Black man in this country, it's essential for people who are of a certain demographic to exercise their Second Amendment rights, especially. So only one place that I can figure that out, right? So
it's ironic because when we came down here, Eddie, it was like up in the Pacific Northwest, like Black or Mexican groups. My wife hates when I talk about this stuff, right? Because I'm a shaved head, so I got to word it very cautiously,
Anything but when you get other than a white supremacist, my brother, you really
right,
are.
Exactly. You say it wrong, and it's like neo-Nazi stuff. I feel like I have to grow my hair out to have this conversation. But when we moved down here, because I'm born and raised in the Pacific Northwest, right? So statistically, I think the Black and Mexican Latino community, I think they make up roughly 3 to 5% of that whole general population. So realistically, we don't see people of color up there. And what is unique about that is the people of color up there, they're a lot more oppressed, and I say that in quotation marks, than they are down here. Meaning, I think they, in my opinion, they put themselves in a bubble quite a bit. Because when I got down here, I mean, it was mind-blowing to me because I was the minority in some places. Which is coming from the Pacific Northwest, I'm like, what the hell, right? Like, this is new, but not in a bad way. And it's just, dude, I get down here, man, and they're hustling. hustling. Like the house we bought down here, it was a Hispanic guy. He owns it. He's building all these badass houses down here. I've never seen as a whole that many business owners of, color and ethnic, and none of them complain. None of them do anything. They just work their ass off and, grind it out the American way. And it was so different to see coming from the Pacific Northwest where, generally speaking, the people of color tend to go, oh, poor me, I'm oppressed up here because of my skin color. And then you come to a state that technically had slavery at one point, and they are hustling down here. Every single one I've seen down here. And it's been a badass it's obviously I got to tread lightly on the conversation piece, but it's good to see because we get a certain
one, it's your experience, and two, you're seeing something, a perspective that a lot of people will never gain because you're looking outside of the box. You're looking outside of this skin color. What is someone really like when they just apply themselves? It's hard. I would find anybody really hard pressed to tell me that I'm personally oppressed. First off, I served in the military. I came back. I make $100,000 a year unless I'm injured with my job. And I'm about to make a lot more than that when I mechanic out. I have a great wife, a family who doesn't treat me because of different color of my skin color at all. Because why? I'm surrounded by people of all different shapes and sizes, colors, demographics, and we all find this commonality, which is exercising our fundamental rights as Americans and getting rid of the boundaries, talking to your neighbors. It's really interesting what happens when you put the phone down and like reach out and talk to people, because you'll find so many stories just like what you're talking about. And I love it. I absolutely love it. I love it. I love it. No need to call yourself oppressed up here. Put your phone down and get to fucking work. That's what I do every single day. There's no reason to wait.
Yeah, it's never stopped you. That's the thing. It's like, I think it's like, if you tell someone, they're a loser, they're going to start thinking that way long enough. And I think it's what happens when you do anything where you're pushing that victim mentality on someone. You're not going to succeed because you're Black. You're not going to succeed because you didn't graduate. You're not going to succeed because you only had a single mother household, single parent household. When you start putting these stigmas out there, you think the people that made it out are unicorns, but realistically, that could have been you. Just your paradigm got stuck in this awful mindset where you couldn't see it. And I don't know if you've actually looked up some of the studies on it. It's quite interesting. But if you look up like low-income housing, the mixed housing incomes versus the low community housing, and this is what keeps a lot of people poor, because when you can't see it, you can't get it. So when you just have a bunch of poor people in a poor community, that's all they see. That's all they know. There's no hope. There's no aspiration. There's no, maybe looking at the doctor next door going, oh my, holy shit. Like maybe I could do that. I could be that. And so the income studies on those are super, super interesting when you start breaking it down, because it's not so much the color that's an issue with that stuff. It's the location and the proximity to success where those locations usually end up.
100%.
That's why you don't see a lot of people crawling out of, the ghetto, so to speak, because it's generally people of very low income in that area. Versus if you get aspiration or people that are aspiring to do better, more of those people would crawl out of the hole, in my opinion.
100%. Well, I think it's just factual data at the end of the day, and you can't break facts. It's just facts. And these are facts beyond race. This is about literally, income, your situation. And this ties directly into the mindset required for fitness as well. Because if you look at yourself and say, okay, I'm overweight, I don't think I can do it. You start planting those bad seeds. You're watering them every time you doubt yourself. You're watering bad seeds, and bad seeds, they don't equate to shit. It's like me taking apples after I eat an apple and put the seeds in the ground. They're probably just going to turn to grass because the grass is going to take it over because it's already negative. It's already grass. When you go, you freshly till some soil, get that real good shit with those little white marbles in there, from Home Depot, all the goodies, and you really do your work, and you plant those seeds and water them daily. Make sure they got the proper amount of sunlight. Keep the weeds away. Be surprised what's going to grow in your garden. You have to have a positive mindset. You have to believe in yourself, and you have to watch Machiavellian motivation on YouTube. It's the only way to survive fitness.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of when you start getting the mindset stuff, that's where it gets super interesting, right? So are you familiar with the 4-minute mile story?
No.
Okay, so I'll paraphrase the timelines and amounts a bit. So just bear with me. These numbers won't be completely on the money, but it was 1954, I believe it was, when prior to that, right, the 4-minute mile was scientifically impossible. Every physicist,
yes.
scientist, the human body couldn't run it, right? So
No one.
then here comes Roger Bannister. He runs it in whatever 3.99, right? But it was under 4, whatever it was. And all of a sudden, for 50 years prior, no one could break it. And then what was it? The first year it was like 1,000 people did it because they seen it could be done. Now they could believe it. But because the top experts in the field said it was impossible, no one even attempted to make it happen. And then that simple shift of a half a second, all of a sudden everyone's breaking it. Now you got kids in high school running it, right? It's just a whole different animal. But that's that the belief system, right? So you have these restricting beliefs, these limiting beliefs, and they're going to hold you back from getting a lot of what you want in life. And that's something that's unique to every single human being. So when they're planted in you in a very young age, it's very hard to get out of those because it's now part of your automatic programming. So in order to do that, you got to try to delete a bad habit, which takes about 8 times as many repetitions to happen as to program it in the first place. So there's a lot of self-work to get done. And unfortunately, we're in a society in today's day and age where it's victim mentality. It's not what did I do wrong? It's what did everyone else do wrong? It's your fault I'm angry. It's not my fault I'm reacting to a certain situation. It's not me. It's not my fault I'm broke. It's the economy. It's not my fault I can't find a relationship because whatever, right? There's so many people on social media, whatever it is, whatever people's excuses are. They're just excuses. That's it. At the end of the day, like if you want to create the life you want, unfortunately, like in no other nice way to say it, you got to grab it by the balls and just do it. Like 100%. Life is not going to give you what you want. You have to take it. And when you have that shift, things get a lot more interesting. I'll just say that.
They definitely do, man. I've definitely had a major shift when I came back from the military because, it happens to a lot of veterans. You have this idea, this purpose. I served the military because of what your why. It could have been college. Yeah. It could have been family servitude. It could have been just wanting to make a difference in the world. For me, I knew I had to do it since 9/11. It was a check in the box that had to be done. I had to serve my country after my stepdad left the day after 9/11. I had to serve. He did it. I had to do it too, because someone has to. It wouldn't have to be anybody, but someone had to, and I stepped up. Fuck up. When I came back, I had no purpose. What's my purpose? A lot of people in America right now, they don't have their purpose. They don't understand. I look like this and I feel like shit every day when I wake up. Why do I feel like shit every day? You know what? If you don't like what you see in the mirror, that is a number one contributor, in my opinion, to how you feel. If you look good to yourself, wow, what would be your mindset?
Absolutely. Yep.
Looking in the mirror and saying, you know what? I'm not where I want to be, but I'm working towards it. And I'm a little bit better than yesterday. That can literally solve 98% of mental health issues, right? The other 2% is things that are out of control. But you can control one thing, no matter what. You can control what you look like, unless you have the other 2%, some sort of disease or some sort of a medical affliction that you're suffering through. There's literally no reason why not to get in shape other than what's holding you back. It's easy as hell to diet. All you got to do is say, I'm going to die before I fucking quit. And that's diet. That's it.
Yep. Well, I think a lot of people's mindset with it is they get to a point of comfort, and it's the discomfort of where they're at is less discomfort than where it is to change. So it's the short-term wins for the long-term detriment. And so it gets easy when you're young and you think you're going to live forever to basically kick it off to, I'm going to change tomorrow. I'm going to start tomorrow. I'll do it later. And I think one of the more gravitating experiences in my life was realizing I wasn't going to live forever, right? So when I almost died, it was a perspective shift. And it's kind of like, get your shit together. You don't know how much time you have. And you start looking at every day different past that point. So it not to be, I guess to be frank with it, it's really the day you start living, when you know you have an end. And I think that's where a lot of younger people fail, because there's no timeline, right? So it boils down to, it's Parkinson's law. So it's work expands to fit the time allotted. Meaning, if I give you a week to do a project, Eddie, you'll start it on Friday, right? And finish it up in those last 2 hours. But that's human nature. So when we take that same concept, right, which is proven time after time again, and we allot the time of life forever because we don't think we're going to die, we take a long time to finish whatever projects we start. And I'm sure you'll see with older friends, family, parents, maybe they got some old car they're fixing up, or this, I'm going to do this when I retire, I'm going to do this when and if these constraints happen. And it never happens. Like sometimes they get hit by a bus, have a heart attack, whatever, they're dead, and they never start
what
with that
retirement?
goal. Exactly. You pour it into savings, to retire at 68 to 72, and the average life expectancy here in the States is 78. So you slave your whole life away and 78% of people hate their job. So you slave away as probably hating your job for your entire life, your life's work you hate, to potentially live 10 years. Once you're there, now your body's beat to shit. You can't function. You were going to go hike Europe, and now you're 70 years old, right? You got a walker, you're in a wheelchair, your knee hurts, you got a fake hip, whatever. You can't even live in these 10 years. You spent your whole life saving to live. So like they forget to even live in the moments, trying to finish out that last little bit, And I think if you just push that time constraint back and think, I'm not going to make it out of here alive, I think you'll find a lot more enjoyment and joy than you had previously, right? The little things start to matter a lot more. And obviously, speaking to you, you're a competitor person too, and married, right? So were you married when you were competing?
Yes.
Okay, so you know how it goes. Like we get in show mode, man. We're on autopilot. The wives aren't doing it. They don't really understand it. And so what a lot of people don't get is, if you're anything like me, and it took me literally trying out the death thing to actually note this in, but I hyper focus extremely well. So if I set a target, it's target acquired, right?
100%.
And I always thought this was a strength, and it can, but it also can be a weakness. But in my head, right, it was never a weakness, because look how hard I can outwork everyone in this goddamn room. No one works harder than me. I'll work 7 days a week. I'll get up 3:30 a.m. I'll work till 10 p.m. I don't care. I'm not going to lose because I didn't work hard enough, right? But what I found going through these, obviously like the near-death thing, was somebody worded it very nicely, and it was, you don't realize what you lose in the wake of your destruction. So all my years focusing on the bullshit goal of bodybuilding shows, right? Because really they are, right? It's a hobby, not anything else. Nothing was going to come from it. I don't regret it, right? Because I learned a bunch, but I would get so focused on the goals, I didn't care what was broken in between, what got smashed. My wife basically had a robot husband, man, for like 8 years. Eat, sleep, and don't get me wrong, like she likes me, but like at the same time, like maybe it'll be a little more present would have been cool. But you get so focused, you don't realize that you're not even living that entire time. And you get to your goal and you're going to celebrate, and you look back and you realize how much damage you've done and how many things you broke along the way, and it doesn't taste as sweet anymore, right? So a better approach for me is kind of stepping back and reflecting a little bit, because you can't change the past, right? I don't believe in living there, but looking back and going, okay, that was kind of fucked up. Let's not do that again. Let's find a better way to move forward. Maybe like laser focus is good, but maybe checkpoints along the way, right? To make sure I'm not sending a nuclear missile into like a village, right? Like I want to hit my target and just take the target out, not the whole area around it. And I think anyone that hyper focuses, they would probably understand that to some extent, because it's like, we might get lashing out because we're dieting and all that. They don't understand it, but it's not their job to understand it, right? They didn't choose to do a show. It's like, yes. And so our path shouldn't reflect on people we care about, how it often does in that industry. And I think that's why you'll see a lot of people in the industry that are no longer together, because there's a disconnect when it comes to that.
Yeah, I that resonates pretty heavy with me, man. I did a lot of self-reflecting in the moment where you were just talking about that. I wish
yeah.
in so many ways, man, that I had gave myself some more grace, not been as hyper focused, because there's been moments where we'll go on date night or we'll go out to eat with some friends or whatever, and I'll pull out my 6-pack fitness.
Oh yeah, you're packing out your Tupperware, dude. Tupperware warrior.
An escalator on top of an elevator covered in grease. I could be in the worst environment ever, and you would see me shoveling my mouth with my food as fast as possible, chugging my 1.5 gallons of water a day, lifting weights every day for as long as it took for the muscle to be completely sponged out, whatever it took.
Yep.
I wish I was better to my partner during this time. And anyone who has hyperfocus definitely understands that, man. They're definitely going to resonate with you because I do. Fuck.
Well, and you'll get it too, because like in relationships, usually you'll have a hierarchy, right? So, sometimes the lady is, the chief, other times it's the man, whatever it is. Well, my wife's more of a passive person, right? So I've generally been the leader, right? She plays puppet master. She'll pull my strings and steer me without me knowing, right? But for the most part, I'm like the face of the relationship. But for I think the first 5 or 6 years we were married, man, I wouldn't even do cheat meals, right? There was no, like, I migrated to doing like a whole wheat sandwich from Subway, right? Because I came from the bodybuilding things where you couldn't do that, right? It was sweet potatoes, chicken, fish. These were the only foods you can have. So she basically lived like a monk for like the first 5, 6 years we were married, because that's what we did. And then I remember when I started incorporating cheat meals, I literally I had her drive to get my pizza that first night. And I was like that anal bodybuilder, man. I got my glucose meter. I'm checking it 15 minutes before my meal, 15 minutes after, an hour after, 2 hours after, just making sure my body's optimizing the carbs from this cheat meal properly. I mean, that's how deep I was in it, right? It was like, it's not like, it taught me a lot, right? I know a shitload about stuff that probably most people don't care to know anything about, but it's useful in my industry, but it's not, you don't have to know it to be like a trainer or a coach. It was definitely overkill. But I remember it felt like a drug deal, dude. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to get pizza if somebody sees me there. They can't see me eating this. I do not eat this food. Fat people eat this food. It's not me. I'm a bodybuilder. I'm walking around whatever 8-9% body fat all year, that kind of stuff. And I'm like, no, I cannot touch that. And then I started incorporating it. And then this is when obviously like macros were first coming out, right? Like they were out the whole time, but you could actually switch a food. And it's like, well, that's weird. I'm not getting fat. Well, that's weird. I guess pizza doesn't make you fat. I guess burgers don't make you fat. I guess gummy worms don't make you fat. I'm like, oh, I guess this whole thing was bullshit. And it's actually just a calorie and macro game. And it all comes out the same.
Yeah. I definitely had my moments where, I don't know if you know my host, Brian Click. He was so kind to me, man. I called him crying in an escalator pit because my mechanic told me I was a fucking loser for eating some Tic Tacs. Some Tic Tacs, man. So I had you had the meltdowns during your preps. Nobody likes to talk about the meltdowns. I'm gonna air it out.
Yeah.
I freaked out crying because I thought I was a half-ass, and I promised my wife that I would do my best at this, and so that when we can spend the time together and enjoy the time we have. I ate Tic Tacs. I lied to my wife. I'm a piece of shit.
Yeah.
I'm a failure. The whole world's
coming 4 calories a piece, man.
The British are coming. Okay, look out, man. I called him. He was laughing so hard at me. Like, dude, you need to just take a deep breath. Throw those in the garbage. Take a deep breath. I definitely had some deep in the prep moments where I've gone completely just nuts about random stuff. But man, the all or nothing mentality, it really equates success in every aspect you apply it to. But there's some things that are extreme, and it does take a toll on the relationships. And I'm first to admit that I've made mistakes where I could have been more lenient. I didn't have to be as extreme. I could have took a breath and just waited till after the movie to eat my food. Don't make her feel weird, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Well, I mean, I've been like that since I was younger. I remember my one of my buddies, right? We were all going out to a movie theater, and like I had my cottage cheese packed in a bag, right? I was sneaking it in, like in the movie theater, like in the pants, so they couldn't see it because you can't bring food in. So I'm in there eating my cottage cheese out of my bag, and then I hear and it's the tuna fish can opening. And this fool, this is Bob McCabe, he's one of our powerlifting buddies, man. He's eating raw tuna fish in the movie theater, right? Because we're bodybuilder people. We have to eat our protein. And I remember everyone around, because you start smelling tuna. And they're looking like, what the hell? But like you said, well, we could have waited till after. You could have ate it before, but you had to get that meal timing right. You had to get it done. And it's, even when we were going, I remember another one too, like because we were like 19, right? And I was more built like this, more stocky. And he was like, I think he's about 6 foot, 6'1". He was strong as shit, right? Pulling world record powerlifting and like deadlifts and stuff like that. But you wouldn't know he's stronger than me by looking, because I looked more like a bodybuilder. I remember we went out to like a restaurant, and we didn't do cheat meals, right? So we were picking the clean food off it, like whatever, whole wheat spaghetti and like this kind of stuff. But we're like, we really don't need the calories. And it's just me and him, right? We were like, after we went out somewhere, we're splitting that meal. And this is before like, dating the same gender is like a cool thing, it was back in the day. And she's like, well, do you guys want this together? Or do you want it to split? And I'm like, she thinks we're on a date because we're like two muscular dudes splitting a meal. I'm like, okay, this is getting a little too extreme. Like, we can't, the bodybuilding world is giving off way too many sides here, you know?
Oh my goodness. I've had so many, great memories with bodybuilding and so many memories that I wish I could improve, but I can't. You can't go back and
Yep.
change. Just like I could say the same thing about people who don't eat on any type of nutrition plan or any type of dietary restrictions where their goals align with. So everybody wants to look great. Everybody wants to feel comfortable in their skin. You know what? Do I agree with Lizzo's choices for my lifestyle? Hell to the no. Is she happy with herself? Good. Right on. Thumbs up for you, big dog. You got it. I am
Yep.
not going to make
Yep.
those choices ever. I think a lot of people vocalize, I don't like how I look. This is the year I'm going to change. I really want to focus on changing my body, my physique. I want to love what I see when I look in the mirror. I want to hit these hikes that Cody was talking about. I know everything. You can't do it if you sit on your hands and make the same destructive decisions daily. And I think that on the opposite side of that bodybuilding spectrum, where it is an extreme, you are doing things consistently, and you do need strength and discipline mentally, and to have a solid complex of different dietary needs coming in so that you're got those boxes checked so you can get the body. On the other side of that is the extreme, no pizza, ice
The
cream.
lazy extreme.
Let me smoke another joint and eat more food, right?
Yep.
People that
Yep.
who talk about it, who don't walk it. What is
Yep.
one of the most important things about this, making that transition, that switch? Because for me, I knew it started with the mind. The mind is a foundation. What do you think?
You're not wrong on that. What I think, and just correct me if I'm off topic on here, but I think this is going to hit the nail on the head. I think where most people fail starting up is they try to do too much at once and they try to change. And what I mean by this, hear me out, like, you need to change, obviously, because what you're doing is not working. But when people try to make a change, the body generally is going to restrict it, right? So it's like the easiest way to do it is like we do with our clients is we do what I call as habit stacking, right? So if there's 12 things, Eddie, that I got to get you to do to get that bomb ass body, like, okay, bring them on. I throw them on you. Okay, here's your 12 stack. Do it. You're going to look, and you won't even start, right? Because there's too much shit. And so what we have to do is, as fitness professionals or any professional in general, if you can't explain it to a toddler, you probably don't know it as well as you think. So what you need to be able to do is chunk it down till it's at really digestible bites for that person. It's like how do you eat the elephant? Well, you bite by bite, right? You don't try to eat the whole thing and choke and die. So you give the person, or if it's you start with things that are very simple, very basic. Because what we want to do is once habits are in, they're automated. You don't have to think to do them. People try to bank on motivation, and motivation does not last. Habits do. So think when you were younger, say you're like 2-3-year-old Eddie, you didn't want to brush your teeth, right? Your parents probably bring you in there every night, dude, you want to have bad breath? And they're forcing you, you're crying, fighting them every time, right? They're trying to bribe you, whatever it took. Now you get up in the morning, what do? First damn thing you do is brush your teeth, because now it's a conditioned habit, and you're going to feel weird if you leave the house and you didn't do it. Like you're grabbing sticks of gum and all this stuff, right? Like, ooh, I'd have no rank ass breath when I'm out. So it's the same concept with clients, like you got to start with the basics. So a lot of people, they start with doing nothing and they're like, I'm going to go to the gym 6 days a week. It lasts about 3 days and they're burnout, sore, doesn't work. So the most basic concept is move more, eat less. So if the average normal person would break it down to simple chunks, like let's just eat 100 grams of protein a day. Cool, because the average person's getting less than 50. Let's drink 96 ounces of water a day, and let's get whatever 8,000 steps a day, or if you're really low, maybe get 5,000. Make them where you got to strive to get them right, but make them digestible and just start there. It doesn't mean you have to go to the gym. It doesn't mean you have to, start doing your push-ups and your burpees and your hard 75 bullshit. No, what you need to do is build a foundation that you can build all that stuff off of. And once you do that, it's automated, and you don't quit something that's a habit, because you're going to continue to do it. And then you can throw another habit on, because then these habits aren't it. We run on basically a 9-volt battery, right? Plugging in new stuff, you just don't have the mental capacity to do it. But the beauty of habits is they are automated. They're subconscious actions that you do not have to think that pull that energy out of that battery. They're automated. So once those habits are installed, we can install a new habit, no questions asked, because we're not conflicting with trying to put more habits in. So then we can get that fourth habit. then we can get that fifth, that sixth. And all of a sudden, you're this automated machine for success. And when you can do this, you're an unstoppable force of reaching your goal. And this is with fitness, anything, man. Relationships, with business, you can do with any damn thing, but you gotta break it down. You gotta bring it down to that base level. And I think that's somewhere where I excel, because ultimately I'm a super lazy person, right? And like, yeah, I might work my ass off, but I mean this in the proper way. If you wanted to hire someone to map you out the easiest path possible, put the laziest damn person you know in charge of that job. Because what they're going to do is find the simplest, easiest method to do that job effectively and not get fired. Then if you put a high performer in that place, you now have the most optimized system that you possibly could, that hard worker would have never tried to get, because they just figured they'd work their ass off to do it. So now you have an optimized system with someone that can actually apply themselves to work it even better. And now you have the best of both worlds, right? So that's what I do. I break everything down to the most basic molecules for people so they can digest it. I'm not trying to confuse them or not give them a slab to start on. It's oversimplification. Like when most people get a plan from me, they're like, this is it? Yeah, that's it. That's literally all we're starting with, because we need habits in. And then you will be in the shape you want to be in 3 months, 6 months, whatever, a year, whatever the goal is we're shooting for. But that's where we chunk it down.
Excellent. And I think that is definitely an important place to start. I've overwhelmed myself when I first got in the industry. Bodybuilding.com, got to check it out. Got to check. Oh, I'm supposed to be taking Arnold's pre-workout because it's Arnold's pre-workout. Yeah, he's like 60 something, but I'm pretty sure he's got to figure it out. Let's dive into that. It's so important to be to articulate your goals, to say them, to write them down, to everything.
I'd agree with that. More so write them down. They're not real until they're on paper. They're a wish until they're on paper.
One of my favorite pictures of myself is when I came back from the military. I was injured. I was depressed, having some issues. I was like 120, like 4.9 pounds or something when I first weighed in.
You were little then.
Oh, I was twigged up, man. This is before I started growing. So I wrote down "never fucking again" with 4 exclamation points, and I put it in my bathroom. And every day I saw that weak, depressed, hurt human being who I never wanted to feel like again. It wasn't like I would want to be like this person. I never wanted to feel like that again. And ever since then, I've been fighting. A lot of people won't even take the progress picture where you start. That picture is so essential. And it's not just essential for your dietary coach, not just essential for accountability for yourself, but it's also, you need to set that bar. That is the starting point, the lowest point. You can only get better when you acknowledge that you're not happy.
Absolutely. Well, and I think you hit the nail on the head with that. And I think where people fail with where you're at, and you probably were doing this too, you just obviously didn't mention it there, but there's 2 common grounds you need for success at anything. And I believe this to be true across the board, no matter what it is. And you need an immense amount of pain or discomfort to propel you away from the goal, right? So this could be like, you have such a fear of being broke. You're like, I'm never going to make under X amount again. You have such a fear of being single. Maybe you make terrible choices and you're dating people every single week to try to fill the void, whatever it is, right? You still have to have a pain point to push you. But that won't get you to success. That will only get you out of poverty, so to speak. So if you don't have something on the flip side, like that goal or that insatiable need to propel yourself or desire to think you're better, to perpetuate you that way, you need both in synergy to really get there. And then have the ability to focus, because where most people fail is they can't focus for any extended amount of time. And you can see it with, Instagram switching to the reels, or even that TikTok coming out, because you have basically, when you make one of these social media videos, roughly 5 seconds to engage. If not, they're just going to scroll past it, right? So the attention span of people has gotten so long that they can't even stick with their goals for any length of time. Well, how do you hope to achieve something that you have to stack habit after habit after habit to get? These aren't 5-second goals. These aren't 5-minute goals. These are 5-week goals. Yeah, you gotta lay it on for a long time. Like anyone that's built success, people look at the snippets, at the highlights. Oh, look what they did. But they don't see all the long nights, right? They don't see everything that person did to excel. And realistically, most of them don't want to hear it, right? They want to hear the 5-minute success story. Like, you can be an online coach, kicking back on your laptop on the beach, shoot a couple emails. Now you're coach of the year, making whatever, 10 grand a month and all this cool stuff. And it just doesn't work like that, guys. Anyone that got to any substantial level, they paid their dues somewhere, and they may not even be good at what they're doing. Like maybe they're not the best trainer or coach or whatever, but they've put consistently more work in better than you have if they're doing better than you. And so you're not in the space, but originally you'd see people doing, at least from my end, you'd see successful coaches online and stuff, and you'd be like, well, must be because of this. You're trying to sort of justify / quantify it, but realistically, it's because you're not doing the same thing we talked about earlier, and that's taking that self-evaluation, right? Like, he's doing it better than me. I don't care if I'm smarter than him or not. That doesn't apply here. There's something he's doing that is better than me. What can I do to level up? What can I do to get there or better? And when you start having that perspective rather than the victim mentality on things, go up to that guy. Hey, man, how did you do it? What did you do to get better than me? Most of the people that are successful aren't going to blow you off if you're asking them how they reach success. They love talking about it. They're there for a reason, So I think with anything, if somebody's in better shape than you, if somebody has a better relationship than you, if somebody has better income than you, it's worth that question. Like, hey, what are you doing that I'm not? And when you can start doing those things, your life is probably going to get substantially better.
100%. And that's what I do when I meet rich, successful. They're usually tied in with each other. Successful, rich, powerful, people on their path. I ask them these questions. I treat them like normal human beings, which always catches them off guard. And then I got that little chink in their armor. So now I can say, hey, so what made you start playing football when you were a kid, Mr. Seahawk? Or, I know that you love being a superstar and making all this money. What college did you pass up for this? And why? How did you make that decision? Okay. Why? Your parents told you to go to Yale. What's going on? Your parents would have paid for you to go to Harvard. Why didn't you go? Oh, I was made a dumb decision, blah, blah. Okay. Thank you now I have that lesson of what not to do. Now let's focus on back of me. What do I do to avoid that fuck up? Because it's essential. It's essential to listen to others. I don't know anywhere near as much as you about a lot of different things that you have. Years of practice, years of rehearsal, daily deposits in this career path, this journey you're on with fitness, with affecting other people. It's not an easy thing to make somebody else look or feel beautiful. I promise you that. My wife's a hairdresser and she has some horror stories about
there's always some.
And when they walk out of that seat, or when they walk out of that training session, or they walk out of that zooming out of that, holy crap, I look so much different than when I started. There's a special thing about that. And you're touching souls, my brother. I really do love it.
It's great. Like I honestly couldn't picture myself doing anything different. So when I migrated just to the online space, I think that's where things really took off. Because I think the downside of in-person training is you become a babysitter to people versus a coach. And what I mean by that is, like, obviously with show prep, the reason you have to have a coach isn't necessarily because you know what you're doing if you've done 6 shows, right? It's because you can't trust your own emotional opinion of where you're at. You know how to work, you know how to eat chicken. You could literally pull up your last prep's meal plan and probably hit that prep at 95%. But it's because as human beings, we can't disassociate ourselves with that to see ourselves objectively. We see ourselves emotionally. And so you can't make good decisions on when to throw a refeed in, whatever, when to take a rest day, when to kick it up. Maybe things aren't going because the perception is off. And the coach is really just a perception, right? They're your anchor points. Now, take this to normal people. They hit their goals because their goal is not to get on stage. And realistically, their goal is very easy to maintain. So the problem I had when I was doing a lot of in-person along with online is we would hit their goals and then we'd be in this perpetual boarding state of maintenance for years and years and years, maybe gain a little bit of muscle, lose fat, but realistically, they didn't need my help and my service at that point, right? And you couldn't shake these people because you built such a bond with them. And when I gravitated to the online space primarily and shifted my focus, I took all the working parts of training and what was working, and we realistically just focused on getting people the goal, teaching them everything they need, and never having them pay us again. And that was the best way we could approach it, because then I didn't have to deal with the horrors of boring ass maintenance, because that's a prison for me, man. I love goals. I do not love sitting at the goal and just hanging out. That's not, I got to be in motion. And so when people come to me and they're like, I want to lose 100 pounds. Hell yeah, let's lose 100 pounds. But when they go, oh, I want to maintain this. Cool. You can eat more and move less and maintain this. And then they're like, yeah, but what do I need to pay you? I'm like, no, you need to learn this so you never have to pay me again. If you pick a new goal, cool, yeah, come on board. We want to have you on board. But we don't do maintenance, right? So we shake them off, teach them everything they know, and then they maintain it long after that's done. But personal training was becoming soul sucking, at a certain point. Like I'd done it for almost 15 years, and it was nice, man. Everyone's getting in shape, everyone's doing good, but that's boring once they're there. And it didn't allow me to have that outreach and help more people. So if you were someone that wanted to reach out, right, I only have so much room because I'm now trading hours for dollars, right? How many sessions I'm serving, I can't bring on another client anymore because I'm full. So if you were like super out of shape, right, and really just wanted to get in shape and get that quality of your life back, I couldn't even help you. So the online space has allowed me to take all the working fundamentals, apply them, teach people these habits, and it's the best of both worlds, man. We get crazy amount of outreach, crazy amount of results, and it has been a true blessing to take that leap that direction.
I love it, dude. I love it, man. Well, there's so many bad seeds and horror stories we've heard about coaches, right? Everybody knows quite a few bad coaches out there. Something I always touch on during this, this series is how do you steer away from the Brittany Dawns out there, the poor coach with a bad approach. And so, there's a lot of cookie cutter people out there that put out cookie cutter plans. People who say, yeah, I can get you to this look, and you end up doing things that are severely harmful to your body and that don't even align with bodybuilding or fitness at all. Maybe some extreme sports where you're extremely overweight and you need to cut a bunch of weight or take this substance for no reason and not check on your body, and you run yourself into the ground, or even worse, you lose your life. How do we as people in the fitness industry help stop that issue from happening? And also, where do we, as a person looking for a coach, where would you go, and how do you recognize those false prophets out there?
Well, I guess we'll do this in two parts. So as a fitness coach, what we can do in the industry is quit being the low cost trainer. Quit being that guy wanting to charge $75 a month, $100 a month. Here's the thing. At the end of the day, if you're really putting the work into that client and you're paying $75 an hour, how much of that time do you think that trainer is actually dedicating to putting research into getting a plan specifically to you, to doing your nutrition, to doing updates, to making sure the right lifestyle habits are in? He's working for 50 cents an hour at that point, right? So they're not going to be putting in the work. And not saying there can't be some sort of automative aspect to it, right? Because there's going to be principles that are similar to each person, but you have to be able to custom and cater everything to fit each individual. But I think where a lot of people fail is they try to price down to meet competition. Okay. So you can do it two ways. Like you can be Michael Jordan Steakhouse, or you can be McDonald's. And McDonald's is a multi-billion-dollar company, right? But it's not because it serves the best food, right? Everyone knows that. You're not getting a McDouble or whatever they serve and be like, man, that's the best damn cheeseburger I've ever had. You're like, it's convenient, right? And unfortunately, convenient doesn't work well in this space, and it doesn't allow you the ability to have enough funding to even begin to market more to help more people. So if you are truly someone that cares, know your value and elaborate what you bring to the table in your marketing, right? So become a better marketer for what you do, and you're going to help the fitness industry more. Another thing where I think the fitness industry people struggle the most, they are the most egotistical people on the planet. So I know everything. I'm the smartest. You're not. Just step back and realize that you are not half as smart as you think. So the minute you think you're the smartest guy in the room, it's time to find a new room to be in, because you've tapped out the information you can sponge up from these people. You got to move into where you're the little fish. And unfortunately, that's uncomfortable. But, like, dude, I'm a super busy guy. I'm running a company, multiple employees. I still answer people that ask me questions about this in my DMs. Why? Because I can't turn this off. It's who I am. There's no off switch to this. If you're like, hey man, what's the latest on keto? I'm not gonna be like, delete. I'm gonna be like, well, here's my thoughts on it, right? Are we gonna do a cyclic ketogenic diet? Are we gonna do a targeted ketogenic diet? Is it a sedentary individual? Is it somebody training for weightlifting? Is it a competition? Is it a lifestyle? There's a lot of questions that go on with it.
The keto, granola bars like every day, and I think it's working.
Yeah, exactly. But I think, again, going back to that, was people don't ask enough questions from people smarter than them because they're either too embarrassed or they're too stubborn to admit that they're not the smartest person in the room. So that's as people in how people in the fitness industry can better themselves as far as being able to help more people. Quit charging $50 a month, right? If you truly bring a service, if you truly help, and never quit learning. That's one of the things, like they get themselves in shape and boom. But I'm going to tell you right now, if I was dieting you down or dieting your wife is 10 times more technical than you. By the end, if we have no supplements or anything, if I do it a little off, you might have a little bit lower testosterone, a little bit, estrogen might go up a little bit, something like that, right? But females, man, you have estrogen in many different forms of it, progesterone, prolactin, you have all your thyroid hormones, your cortisol levels go whack. Those females are ticking hormonal time bombs. And that's why you see so many people in contest prep, because it's the extreme version of dieting, with these wicked rebounds. They'll do a show and all of a sudden they gain 40 pounds after, and I have metabolic damage. No, what you have is you did an extreme and you didn't come out properly and you pissed that body off. And there's a lot of people that maybe they were a female that dieted down, right, and they didn't get that. Or maybe they're a female that dieted down, they have a few extra supplements in, right? So they didn't notice the ill effects of that because they were able to, they're taking T3, they're taking Clen. They don't notice thyroid downregulation because they're supplementing with thyroid medicine. And so these people, it's like they win a show or they do it one time and they think they have enough information. And man, you work with enough bodies and like, I'm still learning. It's a constant battle. But if I don't know something, I got doctor friends, I got chiropractor friends, I got friends smarter than me in pretty much every hemisphere. And I message them and I say, hey, I got this person. Can you give me a little help? This is what I'm seeing. Where can we go? And that's how you learn. But the minute you go, I don't know. Well, good luck. You're stuck. Now your client has a shitty coach. And a lot of mine, man, honestly, it's probably ego. Like I don't want to be, I want to be the smartest person, right? So if somebody asks me a question, I don't know it, I don't want to feel stupid. So I make sure I go learn it because they're paying me for answers. So I need to make sure I'm actively seeking answers, not like, I don't know. I mean, I've had clients that, as far as digestive problems, things are running through them like every 30 minutes, right? And we're talking 6, 8, 12 months of this. They've went to doctors. They've had their doctors looking at it. And I fix it in 2 weeks. And now it's to the point where their doctor is asking for my information because they want to know how I did it. Because the doctors don't know everything, right? They know how to prescribe medication. They know how to prescribe pills. But a lot of this stuff isn't a medication or a pill. It's a strategy. It's a nutritional strategy, which maybe they don't have. And there's so many different strains of probiotics, inflammation-based things. And it's looking at the systems. And again, breaking it down to that base level, like where's the problem? What's the trigger? Now let's find a solution. And all that information is out there to anyone if they want to actively seek it. But it's finding people like me who have actively been seeking it for 15 or 20 years. And I'm like an encyclopedia for half this shit after doing it this long, But that's the kind of stuff. If I have a client like that, I fix it. I don't, no, it's like, okay, well, it's time to get on PubMed. Let's start reading through some studies. Let's see where this information is actually at. I know it's out there. The internet connects the entire world. I just got to be able to find it.
Absolutely. If they can do TikTok trends, we can definitely solve a lot of issues without, being told that you have the wrong thing. I've been misdiagnosed for many things. There's
a reason that medical industry has a very high rate of malpractice. I think it's the 3rd or 5th leading cause of the country of deaths is medical malpractice.
Oh, it's very interesting. It's
very high up
there. Not
a
pill or shot for everything. And when I'm in great shape and eating, I had every box checked for fitness and health. And then I went because I had a little bit of back pain after a car accident to a doctor, and he said, "All right, well, we're going to switch up your diet to the Mediterranean diet." And I said, I said, I don't want to be an asshole, but can you even see your own dick? Like, are you really telling me I need to get on the Mediterranean diet?
Yeah.
What is the Mediterranean diet? Which one of your friends came up with that?
They pull it out of their nutrition book because those doctors got one chapter on nutrition, so they're highly educated in the nutritional database.
It just a family.
The thing is, man, I've worked with so many people. Like I've trained registered dietitians on how to get in shape. Like those registered dietitians, don't be wrong, like they know, and I'm not talking nutritionists like you went out and got a certification. Like this person has a 4 to 6 year master's degree in this particular subject. So they are super smart. But what the books don't teach them is the skills it takes to get in shape. What they teach them is, here's what B vitamin absorbs in the duodenum. Here's what vitamin breaks down in the stomach acid. You know, that kind of stuff. So, man, I picked their brain as I was training them, because there's a lot of stuff I didn't know on that. But at the same time, they wouldn't have been paying me to get in shape if they had all the tools from that degree. So I think where a lot of people fail, again, it's stepping out of that bubble and realizing, hey, I don't know everything. And if there's people smarter than me, man, bring it on. Like, I love to sponge that stuff up. But, you know, like, I don't know how familiar you are with, I guess, my medical journey when it comes to stuff, right? Like, I know I put a little bit out on social media and stuff, but I guess I'll break into that here. I guess it's kind of on subject, right? Like, sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so
tell me. I need to know.
yeah. So in 2018, I was prepping for another bodybuilding show, right? So I owned my DEXA scan company, all this stuff. And I was 6 weeks out. So I had just DEXA scanned, right? And I was 255 pounds at, I think I was 7% body fat. So I'm like, okay, cool. Easiest show prep ever, right? 6 weeks. I only got to lose like 2%. This is going to be the easiest prep I've ever had. So this was Sunday. Monday, I'm in training my in-person clients. And I look down, I'm wearing my Fitbit at the time, right? And I look down and my resting heart rate's like 105. And I just feel a little weird. I'm like, yeah, bad sleep. Bad sleep. I got bad sleep, right? What it is, whatever it is, right? Bad sleep. And I'd had some weird water retention on my abs, just very subtle symptoms over the years. That the problem is when you're big, you just chalk everything up to being big, right? I would puke like 3 or 4 workouts a week because I was training hard and all this stuff. Well, come to find out, it's actually because I was dying. So I go home to sleep this off. Yeah, it was real fun. So I go home to sleep off this high heart rate I got going on, right? Feeling real funky. I'm sitting there, laying on the couch, 2-3 hours later, still ain't calmed down. So I'm like, me being the smart guy I am, right? It's my electrolytes. My electrolytes are off. I'm on drive to the store. I'm gonna get a coconut water. That's my problem. So I got this big ass lifted pickup, man, like 37-inch tires, 10-inch lift. I'm driving this to the store, right? And this will go into the next part of the story. Well, I get the coconut water, I'm sipping it, driving back to my house, and my resting heart rate's now 130, right? Yeah, it's cooking. And my chest, you can see it. So I get back to the house,
Kyle,
and
man. American Sniper.
Oh yeah. It was great, right? So I get back to the house, and my wife works from home, right? So I get back, and I don't externalize emotion too well, like distress. I more get blank, right? So I'm not one who like busts into tears or gets like super fidgety or anything. When I'm quiet, it's usually not good, right? I'm either really pissed or something's going on. And this was obviously something's going on. So I'm like, yeah, Jamie, I think something's wrong with my heart. I think I need to go like maybe urgent care or something. And she goes, yeah. And she hates this story, right? Because she goes in that, because nothing wrong with me all these years, right? She goes in the house, comes out with my insurance card. Yeah, just drive up to urgent care. And I'm like, yeah. And when your 5'2" wife like tells you to drive to urgent care, right? You're not gonna be like, oh, honey, I'm being a bitch. Just drive me. I'm like, yeah, I'll drive to urgent care, right? So I had a car at the time. I was so confumbled, right? I just got in my truck. So I'm driving, and fortunately in that area, the emergency room is right next to urgent care. So I'm driving out to urgent care, right? Because I don't want to be a bitch, right? I'm like, my little wife told me urgent care, so I'm driving out there, and I'm like, I'm gonna fucking die. Like, I am going to die. Something is off. Like, my vision's going, my fucking heart rate's getting more. Like, this is bad. So I pull in the hospital. That big ass truck don't fit in the parking garage, right? So now I'm parking in like the back 40, and I'm going to walk my ass up to the ER. Well, by the time I get in there, my blood pressure is like 270. Like, yeah, not good. Oh yeah, shit was off, really off. So they pull me in the back, and they're like, "Ooh!" And then and I always had high blood pressure, right? Stubborn bodybuilder. My kidney values were normal, so my blood pressure's not doing anything, right? Well, in hindsight, it all will come in the rest of the story. That's a really stupid decision, but I knew too much, and all that stuff. But anyways, I get in the back room, and they're trying to chalk it up, obviously, to like an anxiety attack and all this stuff. And I'm like, it's fucking high. And then they keep putting the thing on me, and blood pressure still up. They end up giving me nitroglycerin patches to try to get the blood pressure down. And all they can realistically get it down to is about 180. That's as low as it's going at this point. And they didn't want to give me blood pressure pills because they weren't my primary doctors, right? So I'm sitting here with this whacked out blood pressure. They aren't supposed to prescribe me blood pressure pills or giving me nitroglycerin patches. Well, fortunately or unfortunately, I had a little bit of troponin enzyme elevated in my blood. Troponin's a heart attack enzyme, right? So mine wasn't super high, but it was higher than it should be, where it caused them to have a look. Because at this point, my heart's like visually beating, my blood pressure is going crazy. So they come in and do an echocardiogram, right? And like, if you've never ever had one of those, it looks like your kid painting, right? It's like blue, red, and it's oxygenated blood, unoxygenated blood. And when you've never seen one before, you don't realistically know what the hell it is. So they're doing that, and they come back in and they're like, yeah, you're going to be staying here a few nights. And I'm like, well, excuse me? Because I'm 30 at the time, right? Like, I can't die. I'm invincible, right?
Yeah.
So they come in, and I'm getting the night shift nurses, and the night shift doctors, right, which may not be the best one. So the night shift cardiologist gal comes in, and I mean, my heart's fucked, dude. It's 3 times the size it should be. Yeah. My aortic valve ripped, it prolapsed. I had a birth defect in it, didn't know. And that's what all my lifelong symptoms had been. But since I was in shape my whole life, it never got looked into, even when I would go in with problems. So my valve looked like this, like one of those whirly birds. They're supposed to just open and close. So I was a bicuspid, almost unicuspid valve. There's supposed to be 3 flaps. Basically, all 3 of mine were stuck together. And one of them had ripped. So that blood was going right out of my heart and right back in. So I was regurgitating at 50%. So I was basically a half heart function right there, right? And dude, I was like, the color of your shirt just gone, all that stuff. Remember, I'm sitting there with my wife. I still haven't even told my parents or your family I'm in the hospital, like dying, right? I think my wife had told them at that point, because I'm like, no, this isn't a deal. I'm going to get out of here, right? It's not a big deal. I don't want mom and dad to freak out that I'm dying. I'm 30 years old and still thinking this kind of shit, right? And anyways, so the doc comes in, and she literally looks at me and she goes, oh, this isn't good. She looks and just keeps staring. And I'm like, what the?
Are you going to say something? I'm dying. Fuck.
Well, but she goes, wow, you're taking this really well. And I'm like,
oh my God.
How else am I supposed to take this? Like, I didn't even know I was dying 2 days ago. I thought I was like having the easiest prep ever. And then, they come in. So then they had to start running all sorts of other tests. So they had to do, I forget the actual medical name, but basically a trachea version of an echocardiogram. So they shoved a camera down my throat to look at my valve from the top. And then I had to do a CAT scan, put all the dye in, right? See if there's any leakage or anything like that. And they got super excited when they didn't see any leaks, so they quit taking pictures. So I had to get another procedure done before the heart surgery to do that. But they basically come in, they're like, yeah, your valve's fucked, your heart's huge. Yeah, you need heart surgery. So we're going to set you up with an appointment. Like, oh. So I stayed in the hospital for like 4 days. My blood pressure still didn't come down. So they sent me home. When I finally asked to go home, I'm pretty sure they weren't sending me home. They basically said, just try to keep your blood pressure under 180, right? And at this time, I didn't realistically know how bad it was. So when I left the hospital, I was at 40% ejection fraction. So that's supposed to be 55% or higher, just for a point of reference. So I was stage 1 heart failure at this point, right? When I left the hospital. So my heart surgery took 6 weeks to book. And it was basically because the procedure they wanted to do was very advanced. It's called a Ross procedure. So I don't want to bore everyone with details, but they basically cut a valve off one area of the heart, stitch it to my aortic valve, which is the one that ripped, and give me a cadaver valve. It's the same procedure Arnold had. It typically fails with bodybuilding or lifting and pressure and stuff. So again, they opted out of doing that, but that's what took so long. So I was going into all the appointments and all that. And I noticed by the end, like my blood works, it's getting worse and worse, man. My liver enzymes are like 2 or 3 times up. Like everything's in there. Well, like I was fucking dying. So they do the heart surgery on me, which it's terrifying. Like that was a mind game in itself. That's where I had to jump into, like, I was doing a lot of like Joe Dispenza stuff, because you start looking at mortality rates and all this stuff, and it's not promising. It's not a very glorious time. And then, like, dude, I felt guilty. Like it's a weird thing, but it was like, my wife at the time would have been, what was she, 31 or 32 at the time. So I'm thinking, okay, we've been together. I think we were together, 7 years at that point, maybe. And statistically, I don't have 100% chance coming out of this. And even if I do, like, what quality of life am I going to live after the surgery? And so, like, she could, in all actuality, be a widow at 33, 34. So, I mean, there was a strong portion of me that wanted me to have her leave, right? Not for like, because nothing was going bad, but like, that's a shit deal, man. Like, get late 30s and you spent all this last year's taking care of a carcass, and now you can't even live a quality of life after. So it was hard. That was definitely it was tough. And I don't think a lot of people understand that. It's not, don't trust me, I say it's scary as shit what's happened to yourself. Don't be wrong. Like I'm not discrediting that, but how much it affects the people around you. And that was probably one of the harder things to take away from it. So, I did all the mental stuff. I journal. I still do it to this day. I journal every morning, write down things I'm positive about, right? Program it in, like all this, hippie bullshit stuff that actually works. It's just, that's something that stayed very consistent with me. But I got the surgery done. And when I got out, I was still 35 to 40% ejection fraction. Okay. So I was still stage 1 heart failure, which on paper, 75% of people die in 5 years. It's not a good number. So it's like, I might get 5 years, right? And the weird thing was, I felt good, right? Because my heart function had been so shitty for so long. I felt good. My heart, it's audible, right? So you can't hear it on here, but like that's another thing in itself. Like, 'cause I hyperfocus, so sleeping with that thing's a real monster. But after the heart surgery, right, everything on paper says cardiomyopathy cannot be reversed. The heart cannot shrink. You cannot improve with my condition I had with regurgitation. Heart function does not improve after surgery. So basically, after surgery, what you see is what you get. And I was not willing to accept that. So I'm not dying in my 30s. The doctors don't give a shit about you. And that's what you have to remember. You are literally there for them to give a pill. They don't care if you go home and follow it. They don't care what you eat. They don't care what you do. They are doing a job, and you are a number on paper. So if you do not take some self-responsibility for yourself, you are setting yourself up for a garbage life. So I started reading every study on reversing heart failure. So CoQ10, Picogenol, Arjuna, everything I could on this, right? And I threw every herb I could. And so I checked my heart function quite a bit more frequent than they would, right? So 6 months, I checked it again in 8, still wasn't improved, right? Still was 35, 40%. Now, bear in mind, I'm in a contest prep at this point because I decided I want to do a show a year after the heart surgery. So I'm looking good. I'm feeling good, right? Feeling amazing, doing an hour walk and all this stuff, but I'm still technically in heart failure. So then I reach out. Like I said, if people are smarter than me, I'm going to reach out. So I reach out to Dante Trudel, who owns True Nutrition. He's a very, very smart dude. And he's helped numerous bodybuilders that have had heart failure and stuff like this. So I said, hey, and then him and Matt Porter, rest in peace, but Matt was one of my good friends. He also had reversed his, right? The problem with Matt is he couldn't get out of the industry. And there's only one thing that happens to people that can't get out once you've had conditions, and that's you die. And it's the unfortunate truth about bodybuilding. People will stick themselves to the grave. And it's very, very sad to see. You've seen it. I've seen it, especially in the last couple of years. It's been, yep. But you can't save them, right? So it's like they're just another addict, right? But they just think because it's testosterone, DECA, and tren that it's not bad. But it still fucks you up. And they have a different psychology, have a different mentality. But anyway, so I take the stuff that Dante told me to, a couple more herbs, right? And I go in about 6 to 8 weeks later. Now, bear in mind, I'm in contest prep, right? Which, if anything, is not supposed to be good for your heart. It's going to be that. So I get another echocardiogram done, and I come back at 55%, and my heart is completely back to normal size. My doctor literally looks at this and goes, oh, the carvedilol must be working, like my blood pressure pill that I'd been on for a year. Okay. So it just started working in the last 6 weeks. I went up 20%, just started working. So Absolutely. That's when I was I was pretty much done with that whole industry at that point. But again, I was like, oh shit, I did it. Like I'm out of heart failure. Cool. But you see things different when you come out of an experience like that. And so like I did the show. It was cool. It was cool to see I could do it, but it wasn't something that I couldn't see a life out of it, right? It's not benefiting my life. And then after having that perspective check, like I realized how much it had taken away from my ability to live life. It's like you get out, man, it sounds like hippie bullshit, but it's like you see colors differently, you see everything differently. You're like looking at shit. You're like, wow, that's a nice sunrise. Like I never really paid attention to it. But when you think it might be your last one, like you appreciate things just a little bit more. And with that perspective check, bodybuilding had more minuses than pluses. It was no longer an additive bonus to my life. It was a detriment. And that's where I kind of stepped back from it. And like, once you've been doing it this long, man, you can't turn it off. You can't get out of shape. It's really hard to do. I actually don't know how people get as out of shape as they do. Cause I literally train like 2 or 3 days a week, and I pretty much eat what I want and I still look like this. Right. So it's very hard to get out of shape for anyone listening. Right. But that perspective check kind of propelled me. And then it was more or less like when I was dying, I think the biggest thought that crossed my mind, and again, because when you have a timeline and when you think you're not going to make it, a lot of people go, oh, I wish I would have did this. I wish I would have did that. I didn't have any of that. I had, this is all I've done. This is all I've accomplished. And that one, that hit me in the boys, man. Like looking on paper, man, my resume sucks. And I mean that by accomplishments, right? Like it might be self-ego fed, but if I'm doing good by it, I don't really care. I just felt like for what gifts I have been given, I have not gave enough back to the world. And it was time to shift that focus because I had the ability to help people. And so even to this day, you know, now after doing that, like I have like guys with heart transplants. I got guys that have had the heart surgery and they see what I did and they're like, hey, can you help me? And it's like, yeah, absolutely. Let's do this. Because they paint a very grim picture for you. It's very different. And when I was in that heart ward, you know, the people going in there, they were the same as me as far as problems go. Most of them much older, right? Because I was 30. Everyone else in there was like 50, 60, 70 at least. But they come in there and they would go, oh man, I was so tired. I couldn't even do this and that. And don't get me wrong, I was tired as hell, right? But I literally was telling my wife, oh, these blood pressure pills make me tired. That's what it is. I didn't realize I was dying, right? So I was so trying to convince myself that wasn't it. And I would train a couple clients in person, come home and nap for 3 or 4 hours, right? And go back and do it again while I was waiting on my surgery, right? I never stopped. I still kept going because I didn't know what to do anything else, right? I had to do something instead of just live there in that misery. And, you know, a lot of people live there and I don't know if they actually came out of it. You know, I think that's a hard thing to come out, you know?
Yes, brother. Absolutely. And I'm so glad that you're still here with us, my brother. I mean, I could not imagine going through that experience. I've had friends who have had heart issues before, and you know, I don't talk about it a lot, but I've had a heart issue as well. I ended up collapsing in the elevator hoistway, underneath
Yeah.
the elevator. I just fell to my knees, and I felt like the devil was literally pulling me to my fucking death. The doctors couldn't even figure out in about, I think we spent like 7 hours in the ER. Hooked
Yep.
me up to all. There was a guy FaceTiming his buddy from New York who was asleep, trying to figure shit out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
none
Yeah.
of them, I had nine doctors. I don't even know if they had them
Yep.
9 doctors at this time of night. They must have just
Yeah. You got everyone. They got
like
the,
a shift
yep.
change. They had everybody there. And there was people like yelling for help and they wouldn't even go. They were like trying to figure out what
Yeah.
happened to my heart. They
Yeah.
tried every test. They could not find anything. And it came
Yeah.
down to them saying that I had like a temporary blockage in my heart. So I said, well, where did that shit leave to if it's not in my heart
Yeah.
anymore?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. It's probably not good if it moved, you know?
it's probably not good if it moves somewhere, but there were no answers. And it's something that experience, it's not the same as yours, but it definitely provided some perspective as well. God, you know, the nectarines that I eat get a little bit sweeter. My wife's laugh.
Wow. Here's the thing, man. If you can get my experience without going through it, I completely say that's the way to go, right? I don't expect to go the other way. Because you come
Yeah,
out of
yeah,
that
man.
stuff, it's it's painful, man. It is that like I'm not a bitch about pain, but holy shit, that was bad. So I got well, the thing is, like, I have 7 plates and 28 screws in my chest. Oh yeah, they bolted me together like Frankenstein. They didn't want that coming open.
Yeah,
So
you
I
don't want.
got done with this. No, no, I got done with this. I couldn't even sit up, right? And you bear in mind, like I was still a big guy with my fluid on me. I was up to almost 280 pounds in the hospital. So trying to lift 280 pounds up is not easy. So I remember my wife, she was like passed out on the couch and I couldn't even I was like laying like day after surgery and the pain was so high. And I like trying to reach the stupid button. I could barely get to it. They finally get it and they had to have some they woke the doctor up at like 3 a.m. because they had to see what they could give me right after the heart surgery because I was physically shaking from the amount of pain I was in. Like it looked like I was out in the cold, just shivering. And I mean, it was awful, absolutely awful. And then I don't, you know, back in the day, I took way too many painkillers, was probably the problem, but I have a high tolerance to them. So just put in perspective, I don't respond to Dilaudid or morphine derivatives. So that didn't do shit for me. I forget what the one they actually put me on that did, but it barely took the bite off. When I left the hospital, I was prescribed 4 Percocet every 3 to 4 hours and 1 Flexerol every 4 to 6. So I was going through almost 100 Percocet in 3 days. So when I went to refill my prescription, when I left the hospital the same day, and you're leaving and trying to refill a bottle of 100, they get a little questionable about that. But I didn't want to run out, right? Because it didn't feel super good. But I actually ended up getting a hernia in the hospital trying to get up and down out of the bed. So I had to get a double hernia surgery 6 weeks after heart surgery. That was a hoot. Yeah, fun in itself. So most surgeries I come out of, in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have did that surgery because that was the only one I've ever got sick coming out of, because probably I was still in heart failure at that point, right? So like, my bad. Don't rush getting cut open again after you've had your ticker cut open. But like, I didn't want to like be out healing too long. I'm like, if I get this done early enough, then the recovery time's the same. I can get back to it, because as you know, in the fitness industry, man, your identity is your body. And so I was still in that mode. You're the big guy, you're this. So even though, I'm not like super small now, this doesn't jive as like big. So when people are like, oh man, how many times, this is tiny for me, right? This is a little guy body. This isn't an in shape body, but I had built that identity.
Body dysmorphia.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like, how we sprint away from it. We run from body dysmorphia. The idea of it, just sprint in the other direction.
Yep. Absolutely. And then you get out and now you have to face this new reality. And it's very different because, dude, 15 years, I didn't do anything but bodybuilding. It was bodybuilding, training. I'm going to do off season this year, shows the next year. I didn't know a life outside of bodybuilding, right? To put in perspective, like when I say my wife literally lived in a prison, we didn't take our first vacation till like 6 or 7 years after we were married. Okay. Because I couldn't go because I got to bodybuild, I got to work, I got to pack all my food, right? You can't do that. So I forget if we went to the Big Island or maybe it was Disney first, but one of the two, right? And that's where I started, like 1 week a year, we would do a vacation or something like that, right? But it's still, and not saying that I'm a big traveler or anything now, but I'm much more receptive to the idea of it because it's about enjoyment and fulfillment, right? But you couldn't have got me to do that prior, and now it's like we look forward to doing stuff like that. And it's just, it's a very different mentality, much healthier, obviously body wise and mentality wise. I think there's a lot of both in bodybuilding that's kind of masked with the facade of a physique. So you see like the chiseled abs and the rip thing, and you got the people on social media posting their pictures. And like, being a coach, man, I work with and know a lot of the other people, the players in the industry. And I think one of the big takeaways that people should just know is social media is bullshit. So these personas that people put out are not them. They'll get behind a camera on social media and they'll be very fluent. They're talking so smooth. You'll think they're the smartest person in the room. And then you'll see this person in the real life, right? And they can't squeak a word out. It's like they go in character when they log in, or they try to put out this massive success on social media and they're sleeping on a mattress in a studio apartment. That's not successful. Like not even a box spring, just a mattress on the floor. But online they get on there, talking so fancy. I'm the coach of the year. Here's my clients, etc. And they're painting a false image of what it is. So people see it and then obviously like Photoshop and all that, they get a false perception of the reality of it. And the reality is a lot of people in the fitness industry are some of the saddest, loneliest people that you will ever meet. And it's the cold, hard truth of it. I don't know how many fitness people you've had on here and interviewed as far as that goes. You'll see it the more you get into, if they actually open up. But there's a lot of that because they're trying so hard to convince everyone else they're happy, convince everyone else they're cool, convince everyone else they're successful without actually putting the work in to do so. And it ends up just biting them in the ass. They live generally a life of self-destructive misery. And it's pretty bad. I mean, we can brush on a subject here. Do you remember Adam McVeigh?
Yeah.
Okay. So he ran the Geared Up podcast, right? Okay. And he ran that for years. So, he had like people like Dorian Yates on there, very, very big in the bodybuilding community. So I met him in person for the first time. I had moderated like the Geared Up thing online for him and stuff. So I'd known him in internet land for a while. But when Matt Porter died, he came and stayed. Phil Biz did too. And he's a cool guy. But they came and stayed at my place when Matt died, right? So it's the first time I met both of them in person. And Adam, he was about what you expect, man. Like he's pretty he was the same person online, right? That was a cool thing. So it wasn't any misconceptions there. So we bonded there a bit, and then when we moved down to Texas, my wife and I, we don't do too bad, man. And we had a rental house at the time because we had just kind of moved here sight unseen. We had a guest room and all that stuff. And he called me up crying one night because he was in and out of alcohol rehabs, like, so 3-4 times, like full detox, man, siege in the works. And he was in tears and he's like, hey man, I'm going to die if I stay here. I'm going to die if I stay here. So I'm like, you don't want to let somebody off the phone like that, right? So I went up to my wife and I'm like, hey, I think he's talking about living with us. I was trying to get him to come down there on vacation, right? Clear his mind. And he took it a little bit more extreme, but she's like, well, yeah, like, what else do we have? What else can we do? I mean, we have the guest room, like we can bring him down. Okay, cool. So we bought him some tickets, flew him down. He lived with us for a few months, but man, you can't save everyone from themselves. So he had like a job. He was working at Walmart, but he ended up almost killing my dog like twice, stealing my prescription medications. Oh yeah, just went down the shit real quick. Yeah. So long story short, right? He does all this stuff. We end up kicking him out, right? And he was dead 2 weeks later on a bench in Chicago. Either drugged himself up or just died from all the stuff he did. And it's kind of sad because you're like, man, I kicked him out. Like but you can't think like that, right? Because he carved his own grave, and it was sad too because he had, a couple girls, and he had been on top of the world at one point as far as like popularity for him. And I don't know if the fame ate him, and then when the Rona shut down his gym, he just kind of shifted gears. But it was sad to see because he was kind of a shell of himself when he came down, and we were trying to like get him back to good. But that was I guess my first and only firsthand experience of like the deep end of drug use. I had to actually carry him into the ER because he was fully seizing up at our house. Like his resting heart rate was like 120. Like the nurse couldn't get out of the car, so I had to pick him up and put him in the wheelchair because he was full seized, dude, couldn't move. Carry him in there, and so this was within the first week of him coming down there. I was up till like 3 a.m. in there with him and all that stuff. It was interesting, but it's sad to see because you don't want anyone to die. But man, it's like people, they commit suicide with their forks. They commit suicide with a bottle. They commit suicide with a needle. It's not just people like blowing their head in, man. They do it from every other feasible thing that you could think of. And I think seeing that in person, it was definitely that was a humbling experience in itself, right? It was a learning curve for me because I've had friends like kill themselves. You've talked about it on these things before too, and it's rough, but to watch them do it through a different mechanism, and it was different, definitely different.
It is. And we have a serious issue across the country, man. And it's no secret how we treat ourselves. And it doesn't need to be, as you've spoken about often, especially on here, you don't have to be an extreme bodybuilder. You don't have to be that. You can be just somebody working towards self-betterment. And self-betterment means you look good and you feel good to yourself. These are standards you set for yourself. And you can set these standards, or you can be sad and painful and upset about who you are. You don't have to live a life of sadness, suppression. You don't have to live a life of oppression from others. You don't have to put yourself in these boxes unnecessarily. There is a way to pursue anything. All you have to do is have the right coach and the right approach, or have the diligence, the discipline to do the research yourself, as you have done. And why can't people do that? I think it's so essential, and I really, really do hope that, especially for anyone listening to this, who's on the fence about how they look, about how they feel when they look in the mirror, do something about it. You deserve exactly anything that you work towards in life, and you're never going to get it unless you start. And start today. Don't wait another day to get the body you deserve. Start now.
Yep. Well, I think it's something to be said about the brain is made to survive, not to thrive. So when people think back, we have a caveman brain. And I think one of the biggest detriments that we have with just success in general is thinking we're so civilized, thinking we're so smart. But at the end of the day, guys, we are a glorified monkey. We're a monkey that mastered speech. That is it. So like, don't think you're so superior to the critters. We have all the capability in the world, but the inability to execute because of our primal brains. So you look at like in nature, success isn't something sought out in nature, right? You have survival. So you got to have eat, shelter, water, and then procreation. You got to be able to continue your species. Those are your 4 basic things. So eat and water, obviously one. Basically, let's call those food. So you look at your three of your biggest markets in the United States: housing, the food industry, and the porn industry. They're basic human needs, basic necessities. So these are survival instincts that are bred into us that people are essentially letting control them, because there's no feast or famine anymore. No one in America is going to starve to death. Even the poor don't have the ability to physically starve to death here. And that's, I think, where a lot of people negate it, because the cheapest food is the most nutritional dense. So will they have a high quality of life? No, but like a Pop-Tart, man, that's like 50 cents. So that's a lot of calories for the buck, right? And you can get food stamps, you can get all this. But I think where people don't understand it is no one's going to do it for you. And to get out of survive mode into thrive mode, that takes some serious amount of work, because every day you're struggling. Even people, when they get successful, don't think that they don't battle the same demons you do. You think that person who's like grinding, running businesses, like, I don't get up every day like the Energizer Bunny ready to go. Some days I'm like, okay, I got to get up because I got a standard to hold, right? I have to be here for my clients, my employees, everything like this. But you have to have that. And where a lot of people fail is surviving is what we're made to do. So they go in that mode and they stay there. And you have to set yourself up with a plan to succeed, a plan to thrive. And like you said, coaching is a way to expedite the process. So what took me 15 years to do, yeah, you're going to pay me money, but guess what? I'm going to give you the crash course on how to not do it wrong for 10 or 15 years, so you can get the same results I did in a third of the time. And at the end of the day, we have money's great, but you will never get your time back. Even rich people, they still got 24 hours, right? They buy their time back, right, by having other people do things for them. That's all money does. It's a unit of time. So people have to be able to emphasize on that thrive. So what does a thrive life look for you? And then chunk it down, break it down the goals. Like, what is that? Is it a happy marriage? Is it a house? Is it children? Is it that dream job? But if you don't have a target to hit, you're never going to get it. And I think that's where a lot of people fail in their seeking of thrive, because they don't know what they actually want. And if they would just take a little bit of time to self-reflect, I think it would go a lot further. So then they would actually have an objective to hit, and they could actually start breaking it down to actually have a goal to acquire.
100%, brother. And I think that especially after listening to this, a lot of people are going to have a reinvigorated feeling of, a necessity to chase your dreams, to chase your goals. Don't sit there and just settle. Settling and is where you let your dreams die. I always ask people regularly, what dreams, what aspirations do you have that have been sitting on your back burner that you're not working towards? You are letting them die. And when your dreams die, you're alive, but not living. You have to pursue something. If anything, just pursue having a bunch of sex. At least that going for you.
At least you got a target.
At least got a target, right? And if that don't work, or even in conjunction with that, why don't you pursue money so that you can have more time and freedom? Just like you spoke about, money is just a unit.
Absolutely.
You trade it for time. Pursue
well,
it.
I think on that note, I think the problem is people get the wrong perspective with money, thinking money's evil, money's the root of all things. If most people would sit down and actually have a hard conversation with themselves and ask themselves, how many problems do you have that money can't solve? And when you think of it like that, 97% of your problems cannot be or can be solved with money. Like my heart thing was technically solved with money. Thank God I had insurance, because this is like a $350,000 chest, right? But regardless, I didn't have that kind of funding at the time. But regardless, most problems you have, other than maybe a health problem, can be solved with money. If somebody cuts your leg off, right, like maybe enough money you can get it stitched back on, whatever. But most of your problems money can solve. So instead of thinking it as evil, think of it like a tool, right? So when it's a tool, so bleach, if you had to bleach your clothes, you're bleaching whatever your white shirts to get the stains out, it's not evil, right? But if you drink bleach, that's pretty evil, right? Like it's going to kill you. So it's not money itself that's good or evil. It's what we do with it. And unfortunately, I think when most people get a good amount of funding in, a good amount of income, it reveals who they really are. And some of them may not have been good people to start. And it brings out those character traits. So then people now associate money with that versus what money can do. And so if you have money, like you can donate to charities. Like we had the funding to bring Adam down and give him a chance to succeed. That is not something anyone else on his list was willing to do. but we have the capabilities because of what we've done, from a self-employment standpoint.
And I think it's essential, right? That's something that we do here at Off the Deep End. We donate as much as we can to, obviously, we keep enough to stay afloat, but that's literally it. Everything else,
You got to feed yourself first. Yep.
Survivors. Every single chance we get, we the female, right? She does a great job helping out domestic violence survivors, helping remind them that they have power in their lives via teaching them how to shoot. It's a very simple and easy and proven concept to help people stand up for themselves after going through an extremely traumatic and actually oppressive situation like that. I think that it's essential to have funds so that you can work with them and do things with them. When you have financial freedom, that is where you're truly free in this country. There's a land of opportunity. All you have to do is reach out and grab it. And that's as easy as not grabbing pizza when you don't like how you look. It's that simple.
Yep. And that's the thing. I think a lot of people build it up to be harder. And I'm not saying it's easy to get where you're making a lot of money, but it's like, you have to hire people if you want to expedite the process. Like, you can learn it on your own, but how much time debt do you want to save? Because that's all paying cash flow is. So when I really wanted to accelerate my business and stuff, that's when I went into business coaching. And when I hired those coaches, well, guess what took off? Because I wasn't afraid to do the work. I was ready to put the application in. So there would be people in like the same whatever coaching program, right? And they're like, well, what are you doing different? Realistically, I'm not doing anything different. I'm just doing what I'm supposed to, and I'm working harder than you at it. And that was kind of the different, what set us up differently, and that's it. But without that catalyst, life wouldn't be where it's at now. It would still be great, right? But that was a game-changing moment, because that was actually the first time I hired a coach in my entire life, because I was always so stubborn. I can do it on my own. I'm the smartest guy in the room. No one can do it like me. And anyone listening, that's just stupid. It is dumb, and it will leave you in the same place. And I ate my shoe, man, when I got into coaching, because I realized how much I didn't know. And I came from arrogant, and I knew a lot about getting the body in shape, right? But about the business side of it, that I didn't have the ability to do, because I'd never seen it before. And so when I got into that, I was in stupid bodybuilder mindset. So I'd see like a smaller guy, I'm like, well, there's no way he can coach people. But then I'm looking at it, I'm like, I coach like 80% females. Okay, that's my main demographic. I don't look like a girl wants to look. I'll just say that, right? So I'm like, well, it's really dumb for me to see that like smaller guy be like, well, he's not going to be able to tell me how to coach. Like, well, I shouldn't be able to tell my girls how to coach with that mindset, because like, come on, man, no girl of mine has a 20-inch arm, like that's not something they're shooting for. So when I finally was willing to accept that, right, and eat my ego, willing to eat some crow on that, that's when things took off, because you have to get uncomfortable with it before it's going to get comfortable. And that was a high level of discomfort for me. And so it kind of started when we moved to Texas, right? So as you know, the Pacific Northwest lost its shit. Being in the medical assembly line, right? I didn't have any heart tests for almost 4 years, Eddie. I was supposed to get them every year. Yeah. So I didn't even know if I was dying or not, right? Because again, like I had fixed it, but like who knows if that was like a blip or if it was like legit. They didn't care. The only thing they cared about was Rona, right? That was it. I would be reading blood work to my doctors, and they'd try to put me on pills. They'd try to lump me into you have to have low sodium group, and all my blood work, I'm low sodium, low potassium, low magnesium. So, I mean, even currently I take 11 caps of magnesium a day. I have prescription potassium, and I drink salt every morning just to keep my electrolytes normal. And that's just my body and how it reacts. It probably was never meant to be this big, but it is what it is, right? But they would look at that same blood work and they try to put me on a diuretic when I'm already low on all of my electrolytes. And this is someone who's a medical professional. So the minute I would even humor the idea, all of a sudden my heart's going into arrhythmias because my electrolytes are low. So I'm like, no, like this will kill me trying to listen to these doctors, right? So then I had to do my own research, find some good doctors, because there are some out there. And when I did that, life got a little bit better. But long story short, I think the cusp for us, as far as the Pacific Northwest went, before we made the move down here to Texas, we went and seen my buddy. My buddy kind of on a spur moved over to Idaho, right? Disappeared for 2 weeks, right? We trained together like 5 days a week. I hadn't heard from him 2 weeks. All of a sudden, he lives in Idaho. So I was like, okay. He just got sick of the same thing. Anyways, we went over and seen him, and we stayed at the Coeur d'Alene Resort, right? And that place was beautiful. The whole town was snowy. It's like we were in like Santa's workshop, right? It was super cool. But you live close enough to know, you cross that border from Spokane to Idaho, and all of the Rona disappeared. There was no masks, there was no signs, there was no anything. And so we got over there, and I think one of the problems that people in the Pacific Northwest got into was they convinced themselves it was like that everywhere. And when I crossed that border, my perspective shifted, and I realized that there was normal. Like I knew I had clients in Texas, I had that stuff. I knew it was, but I didn't know. So when I seen it, I was like, yeah, this is not good. And then, anyways, we get back, and one of my dogs, man, she's coughing so bad, she's throwing up, and it's like, shit, it's time to get her an emergency vet, right? Because she can't go a minute without coughing to the point where she's vomiting up all this stuff. Anyways, we call 4 different vets before we can get in because the Rona. Can't get a dog in because the Rona. We had to curbside drop off my dog because the Rona. Too dangerous to bring him in the lobby. And it was the dumbest damn thing I've ever had to deal with, man. I'm like, nope, I am done with this state. I will never stay here. So like, I will never go back to that state. I'd never. If I had to fly to Coeur d'Alene, man, I would drive to Boise and I would rent a car to drive north, just sheer out of spite of that. My folks, everyone, they didn't believe me, right? Like, oh, you'll come back. No, I won't. I will never stay. I'll Zoom a funeral. We're really good at Zoom now, so it's all good. But we literally sold all of our vehicles. We rented a house off Facebook Marketplace, sight unseen. We shipped our stuff in like a 12-foot trailer down here, whatever stuff we want to keep. Rented a minivan, drove down with our 3 dogs, and that's how we began our Texas journey.
Oh my God. Well, you know what? That might be the foundation for how everybody needs to begin their Texas journey.
Well, you got to burn, if you want to take the island, man, you got to burn your boats, right? I was like, nothing can be worse than this place, right? Like, because I was fully convinced, man, I'm like, I'm going to die if I stay here in Washington. I feel like my soul's getting sucked out of me. And then you get down here, and the South it's a different animal. Everyone is nice. Everyone is nice down here.
What? They're not all racist?
You know, like, no, it's actually amazing. So like
Surprise,
hand got tired. But when my hand got tired from waving at people, they had this like a bike crowd riding by, right? Like, you know, the bikers that ride around like for races and stuff.
Yeah.
They're going down the street, and every single one of them is waving at you when you're walking, right?
Oh.
So you're like, and you don't want to be like a dick and not wave, right? So you're like, okay. And then everyone, so you're like this the whole time you're walking. They're like, oh, come on, guys, you forget your bike. Just super friendly, super social, kind of throwing some banter out. Things that never happen in the Pacific Northwest. Like I'd get caught up bullshitting with the lady at Walmart when I'm going to leave. My wife's like dragging me out of there. They're not like hating their life, dreading to go to work. They had signs basically saying if you shoplift, your ass is getting arrested. You know, stuff they don't have up there in the Northwest. I was like, it felt like home. You know, it was home. Finally, it was home.
That's a dream come true, man. I'm happy.
Absolutely.
I'm so happy that the move to Texas worked out, man. I'm more so happy that you're still here with us, dude. That is a huge thing that you've gone through, you experienced, and I'm thankful that you're able to talk about it, not just like physically, but also you're able to talk about it because it can be extremely traumatic experience to go through any near-death experience, and it can definitely successfully reinvigorate how much you appreciate life, man. I love that.
Absolutely.
Well, I definitely appreciate your time. I appreciate your insight. I appreciate your knowledge. Where can people find you?
Social media, basically Cody Watkins Fitness across the board. So Instagram, Facebook. I think I'm on TikTok too, but I'm not like 20, so I have a hard time with that one. But I am technically on there. I think I even got a Twitter too. That's like Cody Watkins Fit. I think YouTube's Cody Watkins Fitness. Pretty easy to find on there. Coaching stuff, you know, like my coaching company, I rebranded my old brand. So healthyimagecoaching.com is where that's at. That's where people can reach out. But basically, if anyone shoots me a DM, has any questions, like I'm going to get back and answered. I talk about this stuff all day, you know.
Excellent, man. Well, I'll make sure to put all those in the description as well. And you know what? Thank you so much for your time, and especially thank you to every single person for listening in. This has been another episode of Off the Deep End. I am glad that you tuned in today to gain some perspective, some serious perspective. It's so important to take care of your body, and every single second you decide not to, not think not to, but decide not to, you're setting yourself back. Start your journey today. Don't wait. You deserve the body that you should be able to work towards. So get after it, y'all.